Wind turbines, solar farms, batteries, and biofuels. The green boom is happening everywhere. But one region stands out, the Global South. With the US stepping back on climate policies, are emerging economies now driving the world's clean energy transition? And if they are, what does that mean for the rest of the planet? BRIC countries, emerging economies like Brazil and China, now produce more than half of the world's solar power, according to a report by energy think tank Ember. And China is the main force behind that boom, accounting for 39% of all solar power produced worldwide in 2024. That number will rise in the coming years. The International Energy Agency expects China to roll out about 60% of all new renewable capacity worldwide by 2030. At the same time, China is still the world's biggest energy user and top emitter of greenhouse gases, so its choices really matter for the planet.
China has already set its new direction towards a clean, more sustainable future, and that transition will only accelerating but not slowing down. And that could be one of the biggest contributions China is making to addressing the global climate change challenge.
China isn't just building renewables at an incredible pace, it's also running the show when it comes to making solar panels, wind turbines and batteries. Its solar cell exports even jumped 73% in just the first half of this year. Clean tech is giving the country a real boost to the economy. One reason China can make this tech cheaper than anyone else is because it produces at such massive scale. The low costs are driving prices down around the world. That means other countries, especially in the Global South, can buy Chinese-made clean tech more easily, helping speed up their own green transitions.
So a lot of emerging economies are already performing at a higher rate of electrification compared with some of the leading industrialized countries. So that means that it has set an example for emerging economies to leapfrog.
China basically runs the global supply chains for these clean energy technologies. Lots of countries now depend on Chinese-made panels, turbines and batteries to build their own renewable projects. Relying so much on one country comes with risks. If political tensions flare or export rules change, supply chains could be disrupted. That gives China a lot of geopolitical leverage, because few nations can match its scale or prices elsewhere. China isn't the only Global South country leading in green energy. Kenya is another standout. Almost 90% of its electricity already comes from renewables, mainly geothermal, hydro and wind. Kenya's goal is even bigger: 100% renewable electricity and universal access for everyone by 2030. How does Kenya do it? By being a geothermal powerhouse. Almost half of the country's electricity comes from Earth's heat, and it's one of the cheapest geothermal producers in the world.
So Kenya has abundant geothermal energy. It's one of the largest geothermal producing countries in the world, which is, it's like a lucky golden egg to be a country with a lot of geothermal potential. But obviously the country has done a lot to develop those resources. So this is something that you need to be siting, exploring, developing those capacities for decades. And so in Kenya, this has been ongoing since independence.
Kenya is now exporting some of that expertise. Its success has turned it into a role model in energy leadership for the Rift Valley, where the crust is especially thin. Countries like Ethiopia and Djibouti are all following suit. And one lesson Kenya has learned is that diversifying the power sector is vital in times of climate change.
In the 90s into the early 2000s, Kenya had a deep power sector crisis, and this was driven in part because of our over-reliance on hydro. And if you have recurring droughts, which will obviously become worse with climate change, having a power system that is so much hydro-dependent is a problem. And so I think this really incentivized the Kenyan government to diversify its energy base, to invest in its geothermal capacity.
Kenya has emerged as one of the region's go-to leaders in the energy transition as a whole.
So not just with geothermal, but really trying to pursue pro-solar, pro-wind, other renewable, trying to attract investment. So Kenya, until quite recently, had the largest wind farm in Africa, and so has really been trying to position itself as the destination for green investment.
In South America, it's Brazil that's seen as a renewable energy leader. In 2024, about 90% of its electricity came from clean sources. More than half from hydropower and roughly a quarter from wind and solar. That same year, Brazil even overtook Germany to become the 5th largest solar power producer in the world. Similarly to Kenya, this success was long in the making and came as a response to a crisis.
Brazil has invested in renewables due to the oil crisis in the 80s, and so Brazil started investing in two fronts, hydroelectric dams and on biofuels. So these sources are becoming more and more relevant in the Brazilian energy mix, and in combination with the participation of hydroelectric dams and biofuels, Brazil has generating more energy from renewable sources than from fossil fuels. However, most of our investments, up to 80%, go still to fossil fuel expansion.
Brazil is under pressure to tap its fossil fuels, especially oil in the Amazon, to bring in money, create jobs, and gain political support. And that creates a dilemma. Drilling could hurt its reputation as a climate leader, while holding back could slow short-term growth. So Brazil's role as a green leader, like many nations including China, isn't clear-cut. It's shaped by politics, economic priorities, and competing interests. At this year's Global COP30 climate conference, where Brazil is hosting, President Lula pledged to move away from fossil fuels.
Brazil is pushing all other countries to sit around the table and try to come out of the scope with this process moving forward. The fact that the President Lula himself has committed to discuss a global transition is a good signal that then you also put Brazil's oil reserves as part of this discussion.
The Global South isn't just one story. China's building and shipping more solar panels, wind turbines, and batteries than anyone else. Kenya is showing that homegrown renewables can actually power development. And Brazil is taking the lead on the political roadmap, driving the COP talks. Together, they're starting to tip the scales of the global green transition, even as messy politics and backtracking in some rich countries make the picture more complicated.